Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mike Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center. It's about 10 minutes till 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, August 8th, coming on this afternoon with the latest on Debby, which is still causing a widespread hazardous weather from South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, is going to spread up into the mid-Atlantic states and Northeast over the next 24 to 48 hours. Debby is now a tropical depression. The maximum sustained winds are around 35 miles per hour. You can see the center of circulation here just north of the North Carolina, South Carolina border, about 95 miles to the west-southwest of Raleigh, about 45 miles east of Charlotte. But the majority of the hazardous weather is sort of well removed from the center in these rain bands here across north central and northeastern North Carolina, spreading up into Virginia, and a big shield of heavy rainfall that's developed to the north and west of the center across western Virginia, western North Carolina, and extending into upstate South Carolina. And you can see that rain band here on the radar affecting places like Norfolk, Richmond, Lynchburg, Roanoke, Blacksburg, down to the east of Asheville, down into the Greenville, Spartanburg area. And there's been continued heavy rainfall across much of North Carolina today. You can see widespread flash flood warnings in effect just to the along portions of the I-95 corridor to the north of Raleigh, along the Virginia-North Carolina border, across the Blue Ridge, and including the Greensboro Triad area down to Charlotte and into northern South Carolina. There are also longer duration flood and river flood warnings in effect across portions of North and South Carolina, and those water levels are going to remain elevated for days. We also are seeing some tornadoes pop up in some of these outer rain bands. We have several tornado warnings in effect now just to the east of Raleigh, another one up here in the Tidewater section of Virginia. So we'll talk about that tornado risk as well. But the main story continues to be the rainfall, and as Debby is going to start moving more steadily to the northeast tonight, moving across Virginia and then lose its tropical characteristics and accelerate up through the northeastern United States as we go through the day Friday into Friday night. That will bring that threat of that heavy rainfall and flooding all the way up through the mid-Atlantic states and up into portions of New England. If we look at the rainfall forecast, what are we going to still expect? In portions of southeastern North Carolina, we could still see an additional 3 to 6 inches of rain in some locations. Even in eastern South Carolina, an additional 1 to 3 inches. This could result in totals of 15 to 20 inches of the storm totals across this area. In terms of the heaviest rainfall we're going to see tonight, portions of central North Carolina into Virginia, 3 to 7 inches, with isolated amounts as high as 10 inches, especially along the Blue Ridge here. You can see these brighter colors here from just south of Roanoke, up along the Blue Ridge Parkway, along the Blue Ridge Mountains to the west of Charlottesville. This is where we could see some of the most dangerous flooding, locally catastrophic flooding, play out overnight tonight. So please, if you're in these areas, please have multiple ways to get weather alerts, a NOAA weather radio, wireless emergency alerts turned on your smartphone. As we move to the north, as we go up from Maryland up into New York, through Pennsylvania to New York and Vermont, we are expecting to see widespread rainfall totals of 2 to 4 inches, especially as we go from tonight into Friday and Friday night. Isolated totals as high as 6 inches, which could also cause some considerable flooding impacts in these areas, especially in mountainous terrain. Could see an additional couple, 2 or 3 inches of rain across even portions of northern New England as well. So let's take a closer look. Again, flood and flash flood watches and warnings in effect across much of eastern South Carolina, the eastern 2/3 of North Carolina, much of central and southern Virginia, and you can see the flood watches extend up to the west of the Washington, D.C. area, up through central Pennsylvania, into upstate New York and New England. In terms of the greatest threat, again, in the next 12 hours or so, from overnight tonight into early Friday morning, the greatest threat of flash flooding is going to be in this pink corridor from near Wilmington, North Carolina, through Fayetteville to Raleigh, Danville, Virginia, Roanoke, Lexington, up to Harrisonburg. Especially concerned about this area, as I mentioned, along the I-81 corridor, Blue Ridge Parkway, where we could see some of those heaviest rainfall totals. Substantial risk of flash flooding in the red area, including places like Charlotte, up into eastern West Virginia, western Maryland, and even southern Pennsylvania. And as we move from Friday morning into Saturday morning, the greatest risk of flash flooding shifts to the north, just to the north of the Washington, D.C. area, across much of Pennsylvania, eastern Pennsylvania, much of upstate New York, Binghamton, Utica, up into northern Vermont. These are areas that should be on the lookout for the potential for considerable flash flooding impacts during the day on Friday. Finally, want to touch on the tornado threat. We've had several tornadoes reported today. We had one fatality from a tornado very early this morning in portions of eastern North Carolina. We have a tornado watch that's in effect for southeastern Virginia, much of eastern North Carolina through 8 p.m. tonight. And as we go through the night, that risk of tornadoes is going to spread northward across portions of northern Virginia, just to the west of the National Capital Region into eastern West Virginia. And during the day on Friday, that greatest tornado risk is going to shift northward and eastward including places like Baltimore, much of eastern Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia metro area, into portions of northern New Jersey and southern New York. So again, just to wrap up here, we want to remind everybody that Debby continues to be a dangerous weather system with the potential for heavy rainfall, considerable to even locally catastrophic flooding impacts, especially tonight along the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia, and the tornado threat that will spread northward along with that heavy rainfall threat into the mid-Atlantic and Northeast states. This is our last live stream on Debby from here at the National Hurricane Center, but you can continue to find information on Debby at hurricanes.gov as long as it remains a rainfall threat. You can get local information from your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Brennan at the National Hurricane Center.